The MTG podcast is a virtual space for women and men in the tech and creative industries.
Tune in as we put it all on the table, sharing authentic life truths as we sustain and empower each other in search of our tribe.
We're more than a designer. We're more than our name badge. We're more than the work we produce.
Welcome to the More Than Graphics podcast.
We're that tribe.
Hey, what's up, y'all? Welcome to the More Than Graphics podcast. It's currently 8:02 on the dot Eastern Standard Time, and it's just kind of me right now until my co-podcast sister, Cicely, shows up here in just a little bit. So I'm just kind of kicking off the conversation. And speaking of that, but look at that. Whoop, whoop, on time. What's up, Cicely?
Hello. I'm looking a little rough today, so we're going to have to deal with this avatar picture today.
I feel you. No worries. We are just kind of getting started. I kind of wanted to shout out and say hey to everybody. What's up? How we doing? Jesse, thanks for joining us from LinkedIn. It's so good to see you as always. We appreciate you showing up for us always, Jesse. Thanks.
Woohoo!
So today's episode really is just kind of bonus conversation to kind of go around the theme of fearless. So if you've already been listening to the More Than Graphics podcast, you kind of already know that we've been talking about this topic of fearless for a little bit now. Currently, we have our first episode out with Aisha Jenkins. Amazing story of IVF, amazing story just in general around approaching the workspace when you're walking into spaces that are kind of unconventional or too traditional, if you will. And I also really love this really upcoming episode is about to release with Whitney Knox-Lee, who we had the pleasure of interviewing very recently. She's actually our last recorded episode for the season, even though we've recorded the season out, already done. So, yeah, Cicely, how do you feel about the word fearless right now?
Yeah, we've talked about it on previous episodes before. And I think the word itself just says it's the absence of fear, but we've talked about how it doesn't really mean that you're doing something in the absence of fear, but you're doing it despite being afraid. Because I think to say I'm a fearless person, I love the intention behind it, but I know that literally I do a lot of things scared or do a lot of things not knowing how in the hell things are going to turn out on the other end. And so when I get through it, I can say now I'm fearless because of that situation. But when I'm going through whatever the thing may be, usually I'm scared as hell, but I'm just pushing my way and pushing myself through it.
Yeah, I love that. Doing it afraid, right? Doing it afraid. I clearly remember, I think there's a t-shirt. One of our good friends, Shaylon, shout out to Passionate Event Designs. She did a t-shirt that I got to kind of help her put together, and her quote was "Do it afraid." And yes. I really feel like that is so pivotal in so many different areas, especially for us as creatives, as women in tech. We have to do a lot of things afraid, simply because of the fact if we don't do it afraid, we'll probably never do it at all, which means the platform of women never moves the needle. The our salaries won't increase.
Oh yes, a big one.
Right? You know what I mean? There's a lot of things that won't move forward if we don't move forward in fear sometimes. And so I love the fact that is the continuing conversation in and around being fearless or being having the fear talk period. I know usually in October we kind of keep it, spooky and Halloweenish and other things that come around and around fear. But I do like the fact too that we kind of unpack this on a real level. Jessie comments again from LinkedIn. She says fear is a real problem for me, and I totally get it. I feel like for a lot of women, we have to the way that we process fear, the way that we process a problem, right? I think it's a little bit more in depth than it is for the average other person, the typical A person, the atypical person, if you will. I definitely challenge myself a lot to do things out of fear. Recently, we did something out of fear, putting together a photo shoot. I kind of stepped out of my box a little bit and was like, hey, I'm just going to drive to Cincinnati and meet up with my fellow co-hosts, all three of them for the first time. All together. We're gonna drive out in Veer and just kind of see what happens. And I mean, I wasn't as worried, obviously, but you just never know, right? So, we got together recently and was able to physically see each other and be in each other's spaces. Many of us have known each other for a while, and we've never physically high-fived each other or stepped in each other's toes or just walk with another person, right?
Shared a hug,
Right. And
caressed a leg. That's for Priscilla. That's for you and Priscilla. These special memories I'll never forget.
oh man, I got to touch somebody's hip, like all the things. Like I just, I just love it because I think that is a big part of, talking about dismantling fear in some areas too. So I just want to like wherever you are today, whether you're listening to us from Facebook, if you're listening from LinkedIn, if you're listening from on YouTube today, thank you for just wanting to be here and hang out with us. For those that are new and have never been here before, I'm Danielle.
I'm Cicely, always trying to struggle to find the mute button.
And together, myself and Cicely are founding members of More Than Graphics podcast. So this is our 5th season. We're wrapping up our 5th season. We've been doing this for 5 years, where we kind of sat down and said we wanted to have some raw, real conversations with women in tech and women creatives, and really just put ourselves out there. And I really am. At first, that journey kind of took away. And then as it developed, it became a little deeper, right? I feel like.
Absolutely. And I can't believe it's been 5 years. Like, it does not seem like it's been that long. And, we talked about this recently with Priscilla. We've talked about it amongst ourselves as well. That like, it's really cool to see the evolution of ourselves as like podcast hosts, as people, obviously, because as we change and evolve and grow, we bring that to the podcast as well. But then like, just to see where we started to where we are now, like, it's really, I think it's come not full circle because it's not over, but like, we've really come to a point where I feel like we are now like, we know who we are as a podcast, we know who we are better as individuals, so that like just that overall, the feeling, the tribe, like it's finally there, like it's finally kind of what you envisioned, what we started at the beginning wanting to achieve. Like I finally feel like we are reaching and have reached that point.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think it's so bittersweet. So today we're really kind of diving into this topic again around being fearless and what that looks like. And so I love the fact that today's title is literally the fear that drives us. Like, that's it. That's the line. That's it. It's the caption. The fear that drives us. And again, we talk about the fear of not, right? The idea of not ever doing it, the idea of never coming to fruition to whatever it is that our goals and our dreams are. That fear, I think, is kind of what has really driven me as a person in the creative field and as a person who is a little bit more technical aspirated, if you will. I think also too, like I want to hear from you too, Cicely, about how obviously in these ways, the fear of not doing something right has really kind of slowed us down. One of the audience questions I kind of want to like go straight into today is, navigating these stereotypes and these biases specifically around the fear that drives us. Maybe talking about, I can definitely talk about some unique challenges that us as women of color face in tech and the creative fields. The general stereotypes that, somehow we are, we are bred for taking on harder things, things along those lines, the stereotypes of women that you can do more, but you don't have to show up as much. Maybe the stereotypes that we're meant to be more quiet, or we can't take a quote unquote comment or compliment without blowing up. We're so loud. Like I could go on to sleep.
I was gonna say the list goes on, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Lord. So, I mean, I feel like this really kind of comes to a really great point that I wanted to kind of share today, which is, really kind of digging down and talking about. I had a question. Where'd it go? Here it goes. Woohoo! There it is. Have you personally confronted and overcome stereotypes or biases in your career? And what advice can you offer to other women of color facing similar challenges? So again, I've personally been confronted and overcome several stereotypes. I feel like sometimes when it comes to, I don't like bring colorism up, but that definitely is still one that's still kind of stigmatic problem in some areas. The other part of that is just being a woman of color and being assertive. That comes off a different way to our male counterparts in some areas. And then definitely understanding the advice, right? Like stand your ground. not necessarily stand your ground in a feisty, I'm going to get you like out to get you way, even though sometimes we feel that way, right?
Like in a sort of like, this is, I stand in my truth. I said what I said kind of way.
Yes, there we go. I said what I said. That is exactly what I was getting at, was like, that is so important for us to continue to have those conversations amongst ourselves as women, even more so as women of color in these particular industries, because a lot of times we're undervalued. We're clearly underpaid in some areas. And I think also, well, not even in areas, it's just underpaid. Sorry.
In all areas, right? In every area, every area, every aspect.
Right. And outranked in a lot of areas. Now, mind you, we are starting to fill up more seats, right? And we keep reminding ourselves that it's okay to extend that chair for someone else, especially someone else that looks like us, right? But at that same time, we're still hitting this unfortunate wall, which I like to call like the big boys wall. And it's just kind of like, it's kind of even harder of an uphill climb for a person to climb up that ladder, whether it be in the C-suite, whether it be on a management level, or even down in just the, one-to-one, clientele, employee, that sort of feel. And I would love to get to like your thoughts on this, Cicely. Like, have you personally been confronted and overcome stereotypes or biases in your career? And kind of what advice would you offer?
I would say what's really crazy is that most of the time, like if I've like been confronted with any sort of stereotype or bias, it's been from patients and not from like upper management. Like if it were from upper management or something, like maybe I just didn't know about it. But my experience, especially since being in healthcare, it's usually like from patients. Like one of the things is, I've had like when I took care of adult patients, they're like, well, like you're young, what do you know about this? Like, how can you possibly know? In a lot of cases, like I was in my mid-20s when I started working in healthcare. So people thought I looked younger than I was. And I'm like, no, like, ma'am, I'm like 26 with a 5-year-old. So yeah, I know a thing or two about a thing or two. So then when I moved like to taking care of babies and women's health, like I felt like it was always like making sure that I don't know, like it's kind of like I think some of the pressure, especially this comes from like being a Black woman of color, just some of that pressure is like on yourself with like having to prove. Like I wasn't, out to be the smartest person in the room, but I also wanted to make sure that people knew that A, I belong there, and like B, I enjoy my work, but I'm also a smart person. Like that is why I'm here. I'm not here like just for kicks and giggles and just because I'm playing with babies and I think it's cute. Like I'm serious about my job. I want to take care of the babies, the patients, and that like I feel I always had to kind of lead with that. Like I always had to be very mature. Like I'm naturally like silly and just kind of scatterbrained all over the place, just as a default. Like that's just how I am. But like I feel I always had to be a little more serious at work in order to prove that like, I'm here to do my job. Even though like I joke around, have fun and all that, like I'm here to do a job. I'm here to take care of these patients. So I feel like not being able to show the more carefree, like kind of like I'm always outgoing, but like the more carefree side of myself because I don't want to be mistaken for someone who doesn't know what they're doing or someone who's not good at their job. Like I know I am, but if you don't know me and you already are seeing like, I don't know, like these young upstarts, they think they know everything. It's like, but really I'm not as young as you think I am, A, and like B, I had a whole life before I became a nurse. Like I was doing lots of other things. So I know a lot about people, right? Like I've had a lot of people time. So I think that's kind of the biggest thing. It wasn't like a direct bias that I was confronted with, but it was kind of like, as a Black person, you just know. As a person of color who's in a space with a lot of people who don't look like you, it's just a thing that like you always kind of have this, you always have something to prove, unfortunately. Whether you need to, like whether you actually need to or not, you always just feel that there's something you need to prove. So you're always trying to work harder to make sure that you're rising above whatever stereotype or whatever like preconceived notion someone may have of you. So definitely something that I think, is pervasive throughout, career, home, like if you're at the doctor with your kids, just wherever, it's something that we experience on a regular basis.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I love that. It's like we have to debunk before we can actually get to the heart of the matter. And I hate that, like to be really honest. That's unfortunately the level it's unfortunately a common thing amongst everywhere because everyone comes from a level of I'm an expert, I've had this level of, experience, I have this, repertoire, everyone has their own experiences and we each bring them uniquely to the table. But I do feel like there is an extra layer for people of color to be vouched for, or as you said, like kind of debunking before we even get to the point of what we're trying to get at. Because we had to tear down a level first so that everyone could better understand, ourselves.
Ooh, the vouching for part too. That's a good one. They're like, you feel like you have to have someone who can like corroborate or back you up just to prove that you are who you say you are. What you say you know. That's I forgot about that.
I so vouch for. I'm currently going through a little bit of season of that right now, where it's like I can stand. I know what I've done. I know what I said. I know what I've experienced. Here's my leverage points. Here's all the things. But still, I have to kind of coincide or pull someone to the side to kind of get them to better understand. You know what I mean? Like a lot of extra. And some people just need that in general, like hand holding in that way. But overall, like I struggle with that because I'm like, I said what I said, and it's back to this. But why are we still second guessing? And where does that bias come from? So obviously we can unpack that forever and ever and ever. But I really love the fact that we can at least openly talk about it in this space where we can just be real and honest about things that we've experienced and how we can kind of learn from it and use it to help propel other women who are maybe experiencing or about to experience similar situations. So
Amen.
A LinkedIn user told us totally we can talk about colorism. Okay, I hear you. Thank you. I appreciate that. I appreciate all the support. I love this question. I think it's a good kind of a good turning point for some of the other things we want to talk about, specifically in and around mentorship and representation. So I really kind of want to break that down a little bit. We had a great breakdown of this like way back in the earlier part of season 5. If you haven't listened to that, check that out at mtgthepodcast.com, where we had Kimberly Bryant, one of the founding pioneers for women in tech, specifically Black women in tech, talk about what it meant to have sponsorship and representation, and what that really meant, and to have mentorship and sponsorship. Mentorship more so for the emotional support, the insight, the knowledge base, but then the sponsorship, having that representation, and sponsorship having the financial backing, right? To be able to enter spaces and walk into some, into places that you could not normally get into because of sponsorship. So I love the fact that was kind of defined from her directly, because she's probably one of the leading ladies who could probably speak directly in and around that. But
yes, that was one of my favorite conversations from this season. Honestly, it was so good.
That was like, Kimberly, you're the bomb, lady. You already know. Definitely follow her. Everything she's doing with the Black Innovation Lab in Memphis. All the things that she's doing in California. Like, shout out to you, girl. Like, you're dropping bars still 50, 30, 40 years later after the fact, like still dropping bars. I love it. So one of the questions that I kind of wanted to ask in this space was, could you name a mentor or a role model who played a significant role in your journey? And then how do you think that increased representation, or how do you think the increased representation, can impact the aspirations of other women in tech and creative industries? I could definitely name a few, but I'll let you lead, Cicely. What is a mentor or a role model that comes to mind when you think of someone who's played a role in your journey?
Yeah. Just kind of off the top of my head. So there's an organization called Black Nurses Killing It. So her name is Carissa. She's amazing. She's a nurse practitioner. Like, just, all the Black girl magic, AKA all the things. Oh, look at little baby Yoda. He's so cute. But so I won a scholarship. So she had just started like a small business, where she wanted to recognize Black nurses, Black nursing students, because obviously, we talk about this all the time. Sometimes it's hard to visualize something if you don't see it. So on her Instagram page, she showcases like men, women, people who identify as Black, and nurses, like just in various stages, like just to show representation, just to like spotlight, just to let people know, like, you're not alone in your journey. So I was one of the first students who won a scholarship from her. And this is when I was finishing my LPN school journey. And just like seeing where she was at the time just really inspired me to keep going, and to, like, I think I won in the second to last semester, and really just say that, like, that there are so many successful Black women, Black people who are out here, like, literally killing the nursing game. And when you look at statistics for for Black nurses, out of like Black RNs specifically, they're the most degreed population of nurses. So, whatever percent of Black nurses there are in the United States, which is obviously small in comparison, they are like higher degree holders, like master's degrees, doctorate degrees. And I was just so inspired by that. I was like, here I am on my little bitty LPN journey, like just, dipping my toe into nursing. And she thought so much of me, like you have to do an essay and all this like stuff for the scholarship, but she handpicked the winners. But she thought so much of me to like pick me out of all the people that applied. Then there was like a mentorship component. So she would like talk to me about class and school and what's difficult and just kind of talking about, I want to do this. What pathway did you take or what do you suggest? So like just having someone who has been in my shoes and who was living some of the things that I wanted to do eventually, like getting an advanced degree, working in a setting where like you're literally a boss and like you get to wear a white coat and people know your name, like, that sort of thing. I thought it was so awesome to be able to see someone living that out. And I think we're about the same age. She might be a couple years younger than me. So as a second career nurse, even like I always felt this pressure to like, oh my gosh, I have to hurry up and get this and finish this degree and do this because I'm, trying to play catch up because there are people who are my age who've been nurses for 10 and 12 years because they started with their first degree, unlike me. So I always kind of felt that pressure. And she's like, you know what? You're where you are. You're where you're supposed to be. You just keep doing what you're doing at your pace and you're going to be great regardless. Like you don't have to do the same things that the next person is doing. You don't have to get a master's degree if you don't want to, but like make sure that you're doing what you love and what you enjoy doing. So for me, that was just one of the things where it made me like, it solidified, like I need to do this. Like I feel the representation. I want to be someone that like goes and talk to people about their careers, like little kids and like, well, I didn't know that nurses could do this. I didn't know that I could be a nurse and do this at the same time. So she really just kind of solidified that and drove it home. And it was so awesome to be able to hear from someone who'd been a nurse at that time, I think like 7 or 8 years by the time like the scholarship came around. And so she really just had a wealth of knowledge. And she, we talked about master's degree programs, all the things, but just someone who was well connected, someone who's, at the top of their field, being successful. It was just amazing to have that. And, who looks like you as well. That part was very important. Who looks like you. She's from the South, who understands you culturally and with the lingo. And like, we share some of the same memes on Instagram. Like it was great. So I think that was just one of the most profound experiences of my second career that I've had for sure.
Oh, I love that. There were so many good nuggets that you were sharing. One, like that level of representation, like you felt inspired and empowered by watching other people similar and same representation as you thrive and thrive well.
Absolutely.
Like as you mentioned, that statistic was beautiful. Like the amount of accredited women, right, in this field for women of color, specifically Black women. This is like much higher than normal, right? So the women who are making it, who are going further than, the above calling of nursing are going further than that, right? They're going into doctorates, as you mentioned. That's incredibly powerful. I just feel like that would be, if I was looking up, right, and trying to figure out like, where do I want to go? I want to go there, right? Like
exactly. I'm aspiring to greatness.
Yes, I love it. I love that. I love it. Like I really do. I do feel like in a lot of ways we kind of we have a little bit of shared experiences when we see other people, other role models. For me, that was definitely finding other women, specifically brown women, who were doing really well in the areas of social media marketing. And one of my good friends, she's a friend now, but I mean, at first I was looking at her like she's everything, because she's just doing so well and she was killing it, and she still is killing it. It is Andrea, online Andrea. She does really, really well with her company. Her team's amazing and diverse, mostly women. She is just killing it, and she teaches from a platform of knowledge base and constant upskill. And that really was inspiring to me. Like I know I can do that. I just need to inspire and empower myself, encourage myself more internally to get to that place. And so now I feel like, I'm kind of doing that and aspiring in that way. And I still look up to Andrea for that. So, hey, Andrea. I just think she's amazing. And she was definitely a toolkit for me, like trying to level up myself. As far as a role model goes. The other one was complete opposite. Okay. So, I got this tech thing and I'm working the tech space in this particular area, but then there's this whole other aspect of beauty. Right. And I'm a big fan of Cicely online. She's amazing. Cicely Designs. She's based in New York. I'm a huge fan of her. She's amazing. Cicely's always been like a go-to person for me as far as the level of execution of design. Like it's always high end. You feel like you're walking on air, Metropolitan Opera, like all that kind of feel with a brand. And it's just something that I always want to execute well because of the way that she has set this example of how she executes her brands. And so that's always been a role model for me, is being able to look at her and be like, I don't make all the pretty papery as much as I used to anymore, but the way that she's able to execute all of these different types of designs and still maintain and balance her family life, her beautiful family, the way she's able to mentor other people. Like that was kind of the standard for me when I was looking for how are other women out there balancing family and work and design and their passions. And she's finding a way to do that. So I was like, I'll find my way, but this is like setting a tone, a bar for me, if you will. So I really love the fact that I had both that literal aspect of what it looks like as a Black woman, and then also this aspect of what it's like to be a woman and still be able to hold that bar and maintain for such a long period of time. So inspiring. How about
Amen.
right? I mean, it's cool. Increased representation obviously impacts the way that we continue to aspire for ourselves. So I'm hoping that people out there, wherever you're listening from, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, that you are finding some person, a group, a company, maybe someone you just randomly saw on the internet that think is really cool. That's fine too. Inspiration and aspiration come in different shapes and sizes, right? Um,
Absolutely. I love that. Like, I think it's funny that in this day and age, like a lot of people that we say, like, obviously we know people, but then there's a lot of people online who we like if follow or admire or think like, this person, whatever they're doing is really cool. So I love that as well. But I think like, what is the thing they always say? Comparison is the thief of joy. So that's the other thing too, that like, obviously we as millennials, I think have been able to ascertain the difference between what is real, like, the fog and mirrors, if you will, like
yeah.
what's real versus what's reality. But I'm always afraid for like the generations coming after us that they will like those lines will be more blurred because there's AI, there's you can set up you can do like what do you call it? Oh my gosh, green screen. Like you can make anything
Oh
seem like
yeah.
anything. There's filters. There was one on TikTok like a few months ago, like it looked like you were like looking off a balcony into like some beautiful
Oh
ocean
my gosh,
beach.
yes.
And it looked real. And it looked real. Or even it's as ridiculous as it is. I'm not even a Drake fan that much, but there's like a line in a song that he has where he's like, a girl is going on these trips and she'll take the pictures and save them and post them later. So you think that she's like in, Milan or in Paris at the time. And I'm like,
Right.
it's
Mm.
very easy to get caught up in that. So I get inspired by people, but I make sure that like I apply it to my life. Like, what does Cicely want to do? Like, I'm inspired by Carissa. I'm inspired by, nurse Sarah, travel nurse. But like,
Mm.
how can I apply the things that inspire me about them to my life? Because I'm not living their life. They're not living mine. I have different circumstances, but
Mhm.
I'm inspired by what they do, or I'm inspired by their level of success. So how do I translate that to make it make sense for me?
Yeah. Ooh, I love that. How do we translate it to make it make sense for us? Like, ooh, I
Hmm.
love that. Somebody write that down. Like, I
How do we
love
translate that?
it.
How do we apply that to our lives, darling?
I love it. Okay, so to kind of the last topic here really kind of focuses on embracing diverse perspectives. And I do feel like this is a little bit of a taboo subject sometimes in our field when we talk about being creative and being a person in tech, because we do have to automatically kind of take on different perspectives, right? We have to think about all the different other um factors that can come into play in our job at any given time. So when we talk about this specifically around fear, I kind of want to see how diversity has really enhanced some of the innovation in the creativity spaces that we walk into or that we live in every day. I really, for me, I really value the diverse perspectives in problem solving, design, and content creation. And I have so many other examples that we can kind of expand that on or expand through that on specifically. But I wanted to like share specifically how I feel like being a person of color in these spaces really has broadened the scope of what we see as human or what we see as quote unquote normalized. And I really appreciate the fact that as I walk into some of these spaces and maybe they've not worked with a lot of women of color. Maybe they've not worked with a Black-owned business. Maybe they've not worked with a women-led team before. That we can kind of give a fresh air perspective to what is relevant, to what is encouraging, inspiring to audiences that look more like us. So I guess the question, our last audience question for the night, in your experience, how has diversity positively influenced your work and the projects you've been a part of? Is or was there a project where diverse perspective led to a specific innovative outcome?
Ooh,
Yeah.
that's a good question. And the preface you had was definitely good as well. I don't have like a work specific example because my brain is my brain's on the end of its battery power today. But definitely I would say like in college, I can think of like coming to college. I went from Lexington, Kentucky to New York City, like in a 3 month time period, literally 18-year-old high school graduate to being a freshman in New York City, a city of like 7 million at the time. Like I think Lexington was about 300,000 to 7 million. Big change. So like I thought I knew a lot about a lot of things. And then when I got there, like I was humbled in a good way. Like I was like, wow, there's so much about the world. There's so many people, there's so many types of people that I don't know about, so many languages I haven't even heard of, or cultures I haven't even discovered. So I think definitely, like we think of diversity sometimes, I think it gets beat into our heads. So people are thinking like, oh, it's black and white and Latino and Asian and whatever. But it goes so much more beyond that. It goes to, people who are maybe black like you or share the same ethnic or cultural background, but who were raised in a geographically different place, so they have a different outlook on something. People with disabilities, people who are not neurotypical. Like there's so many ways that you can be diverse. And I think like not having other opinions. Like if you only rolled around with people who thought like you did, who supported everything that you did, like I think that's a boring way to live. And I think you're living in a box and you're living in a hole and you're not experiencing life in the world to its full potential. But when you talk to people who, are refugees from different countries or who are first generation immigrants or who speak, 6 languages with ease because they've learned them as a child. Like you
Right.
learn so much and you get to see things from a different perspective. Like you stop being so self-centered and not even like, we don't purposely, I don't think we're purposely self-centered. If you're from a small place or you're from a place where a lot of people are like you, it's very easy to become, but then you like you have more of a global perspective. And I think
Mhm.
that's the best part about having diversity, not just language, not just culture, not just ethnicity, but having a whole bunch of people from a whole different, yeah, from a whole bunch of places with different opinions about everything because it forces you to think. If you're open to it, if you're open and receptive, it forces you to maybe take a look at your life or be like, wow, I was doing this thing wrong, or doing this thing in a different way, but I like the way this person does it because now it's easier, or it makes a lot more sense, or I never thought about it from that perspective. Now I feel, I'm humbled, or like I've come to a realization that this, subject needs attention as well. So I think there's so much beauty in having diversity, whatever that means. That just may mean someone with the opposite opinion of yours, but being able to
Mhm.
talk to people, have conversation, not debate, because I ain't arguing with y'all. I'm not going back and forth with nobody. But just like listening to a different side of the story, right? Like seeing a new perspective about anything and about whatever topic they're talking about. I think it's very interesting and very important to see those things and to hear those things. But it makes work worthwhile, and it definitely makes life a lot better, a lot more interesting, I should say.
I love this. That was really the heart of what I was trying to, get at, was that when we bring a variety of things, a variety of options, a variety of opportunities, and a variety of possibilities are possible. So I love the fact that you touched every base, like from language, from ethnicity to upbringing to environment. All these factors take a part in how we want to answer or perceive or solve a problem. And so I love that you bring that up because I do feel like that's what the beauty of things that we do. For me and my job, for my business, that's the beauty of what we do. I'm surrounded by women from 5 different countries who think completely different ways, who have different sets of values, have different sets of ways of thinking and breaking and solving problems, and we collectively come together and we create really cool digital products for people. And so I love that diversity of mindset is a superpower, right? And I think that's what a lot of these bigger brands, bigger companies, are starting to pick up what we're putting down. Like,
Yes, I love diversity of mindset. That's going to be a quote. Diversity of mindset. I love it.
Yeah, I mean that is a superpower within itself. So the more that we harness in on those type of different voices and elevating different voices, the more that we, I don't want to say don't sound like ourselves, but sound more of a collective and less of a, an individualized or singular voice. I think
Yes,
it comes off more as a community, an open community that's not only again celebrated, but it's also continually, evolving and changing. So I do appreciate all these little moments where we can talk about these experiences around diversity and positively influencing the things that kind of come from fearful places, right? That's a scary moment for us to be, for many of us, to walk into spaces and be vulnerable about our experiences, to talk more about the things that kind of, in some areas, maybe may or may not be shunned, may or not be as welcomed or appreciated. But here we are in our truth and bringing it out, and being and standing firm in that truth, right? As you mentioned before. So
absolutely.
yeah, I love this conversation. I just think this is the stuff, right? This is the fear in a lot of areas that drive us. These are the things, right? Standing in our truth, being able to come forth from places that we feel like are everyday. Again, one person's everyday is someone's extraordinary. And I think that's the perspective that I constantly have to walk into every day in my job and in my day-to-day living, so that I can better appreciate the things that I have, better appreciate the voice and experiences that I can bring to other people and other environments.
Amen. I don't even have a follow up for that, but yeah, just snaps and so much of what you said. And I love that for you, like in your business, that you get the chance to be surrounded with diversity of time zones, diversity of
Right.
country,
Oh my goodness.
even diversity of languages. Like I think that's absolutely amazing. And do you think this is like a follow up question for you? So do you think it's positively impacted your business and like having people from different perspectives, different time zones? Like, do you think that that was the right move now that it's been what? Has it been a year and a half?
Oh gosh, it's almost 2.5 years. Like, that's
That's
crazy.
crazy. Well,
I know,
COVID stopped
right?
time for a little bit too. So I'm like, girl, I don't even know what century we're in anymore. So yes, I can't believe it's been almost 2 years or two and a half. You said that's nuts.
It's been so cool. I clearly remember bringing on my first VA, and really just kind of, and she's of course across the pond, so she's in the UK, I'm here in the US, and we're just making it work, the two of us. And then we knew once we got to a certain point that both of us just couldn't keep going, and we had to better understand and wrap our head around, we have to expand this. And from the expansion grew the rest of the team, that is now, 8 members across 5 countries.
That's
And
nuts.
it's, yeah, it boggles me because you wouldn't believe how much, even though there are a lot of differences, right? Not only just time zones, but food, cultures, things that are acceptable for women here versus elsewhere. There's a lot of
Hmm.
differences, but you wouldn't believe how many things are so much the same. How many thoughts and processes that we all go through as women, even though we're spread out across everywhere, we still have those same type of feelings and same similarities. And I'm grateful that it's all like kind of in a collective, gamified, kind of attitude. I love that that's based on game and strategy and fun, things along those lines, because I think that is a lively part of our business. But the other part of that too is the truths that we share with each other in the day to day. That many of us, some of us prefer working at night, and some of us prefer working during the day, and some of us prefer, working specifically in areas of podcasting, and some of us focus on more on emails. Like we really have a really cool bond through gamified learning, through gamified anything really, that kind of keeps us all energized and wanting to come together in a spot to learn different things, to embrace different challenges. And that's what keeps Octane, I think, going the past. Oh gosh, we celebrated 14 years this month. Ta-da!
Wow.
14 years this month. Wow. So we've been doing this for a while. And I think it's because of that thirst, that constant, I want to solve problems, but I also want to work collectively with a group of women that are different from me. Um, I think that's also been a key point in why this has been so feasible and loving and positive and growing. I don't want to say
I love
profitable
that.
because I don't want to make it like money's like it's all
But
money. It's not.
profit can mean other things. It could be spiritually profitable. Like it could
Yeah.
literally just be a gainful experience. So it
Yes.
doesn't have to always mean money.
Yeah, I love it.
But
That's
money's
exactly what.
okay too, Danielle.
Oh yeah, I know, right?
Money's fine. We like money too.
We
We
like
like the
you,
bunnies.
Krista.
Yes, we like the bunnies as well. And I think this is a good like circle back to doing things through fear. Like
Mhm.
one of the things that I always remind Danielle of is like I cannot believe that 2.5, 3 years ago, we had this conversation about her needing to expand the business. And she was like so reluctant, like holding on tight, like she was strangling that thing, holding on tight
Was.
to
I was
it
like, I'm not
because she's
going.
like, oh, I'm not like, right. You couldn't have pried her hands off of the wheels. And she was just like so afraid. I'm like, what are you afraid of? And like, I think it was a control thing. It was like fear of failure. It was just the unknown. And I'm like, if you don't get your life together, like that was the only thing I was like, I know it'll happen when it's supposed to happen, but like when the time comes and when you know the time is right, you need to just go ahead and let go. And I know
Mhm.
it's so much easier said than done. Like from the outside looking in, you can tell anybody and everybody what to do with their lives. But I saw it was coming and I love like I think for most people, like right before you have a breakthrough, you like clench up and then like, it's like you're about to perform on stage or something, or like athletes when they perform, you get like the adrenaline and you're
Yes.
sweaty and you're just like, oh no, I don't know if I can do this. I feel sick to my stomach. But then once you free fall and you just go with what like what your heart's telling you, what the vibes are telling you, whatever it may be, then that's when you find like, wow, like it's scary as hell, but I'm doing it. And before you know it, you're flying and then you're not holding on to the handlebars. Your hands are free. You're flying, you're soaring. So I think that's so important to talk about when we talk about Danielle's journey and talking about like diversity and being a boss literally and actually having employees. It's crazy, and collaborators. That it's not easy. Like doing things like I said, I don't believe in necessarily being fearless. I believe that you get fearless later, but I don't believe anyone starts out fearless
Right.
unless you're a toddler jumping off a couch or you're 18,
I feel
in
it.
places you ain't supposed to be. Those are the only times you're actually fearless. And
Mhm.
some of that's like stupidity and instinct. So just because you don't know better, just because you don't know better. But
Right.
like once you actually relinquish some of that control and just kind of let go, even when you're afraid to do it, I feel like that's where the good stuff in life happens. That moment when you realize I have to let go or I'm not going to ever get to where I want to be, and then you let go and you're like, okay, that wasn't even that bad. And then then it's the next thing. And then it's like, oh,
Look,
that wasn't
mom.
that bad either.
Look,
Right.
mom,
And
no
before you
hands.
know it, exactly, no hands. And you're like, man, why wasn't I doing this sooner? And now I know that's what you're thinking. You're like, man, I could have been doing this sooner.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And that is such a testament to like again the will of women and the will and testament of people who are carrying that entrepreneurial spirit. I love the fact that entrepreneurship is literally very much a blank canvas, right? It is what you make of
Mm-hmm.
it. And I can completely attest that, a lot of times it's ugly, sometimes it's not, it isn't a great feel good place, but over time that grit becomes your statute. It becomes the cement that holds a lot of things together. And so when you can't rely on anything else, you can always rely on that entrepreneurial grit that makes you who you are. And so that's what I think has been such a development course for me over the years is redeveloping and redefining and retexturizing my own grit and just realizing that, things can be a lot more possible for myself if I, don't hold myself too high to the standards that I want to bring in and just kind of let chance and passion happen. So yeah, I thank you so much for saying all those nice things, Cicely. Thank you.
You're well. It's like the quintessential example for me. Like it's just I always come back to it because we always talk about something on the podcast that sparks that conversation. But I just like remember the day, like one of the days we had that conversation because you were like kind of putting it out there every once in a while. And I think like maybe you were just like testing the waters, like let's see what someone else thinks, and then maybe like let's get some other input. And then I was like, ma'am, we need to stop like tiptoeing around the subject. We need to put the pedal to the metal. We need to do it. Are we
Yeah.
doing it or not? Like that's what.
Yeah. That's what
And
it
I didn't even
is.
mean that in a bad way. It wasn't like me trying to push Danielle or force her to do something she didn't want to do. I knew it needed to happen. And I could tell, like, the stress and all the things that were coming along with it. I was like, ma'am, it needs to happen.
Yeah,
It's got to happen.
it
And then
was.
our little friend Theo happened. And then everything just kind of fell into place after that, too. So
Right.
it worked out how and when it was supposed to, which I think is a beautiful thing.
Yes. Timing is everything. I love it. All right. Well, speaking of time, it's about that time for us to wrap up this conversation. Cicely, is there anything you want to add tonight?
No, just that, like even in my own personal life currently, there are a lot of things that I am fearful of. And there's a lot of big changes that will be happening in my life, like over the next year or so. And again, it's one of those things that, like I joke about too, like sometimes we ask for things and we get them and we get a lot of them, or we get an overabundance. And I will never complain about something that I asked for, because in some way, like whether you're a religious person, spiritual person, whatever, whoever you prayed to or whoever you asked for, they knew that you were ready for that thing, right? So like I'm not going to doubt myself. Like I'm gonna doubt myself, but I'm not going to doubt that this is the way things were supposed to be. And I'm happy, and I'm living in that moment. I'm living in the moment that I'm where I'm supposed to be, doing what I'm supposed to do, with who I'm supposed to do it with, how I'm supposed to do it. Until something else comes through, until something better, until my life elevates a little bit more, I elevate as a person. I'm doing exactly what I'm supposed to do, where and how I'm supposed to be doing it. So
I love it.
More to come.
To be continued.
Yeah, TBD. Oh, to be determined. No. Oops, TBC. Sorry, it ain't gonna be determined, y'all. My bad. That's that fear speaking. It's not going to be determined. It's already determined. It's just going to be continued.
Oh my word. I love it. Oh my goodness. Okay, y'all. So obviously this is our stopping point for tonight. I really appreciate everyone who has tuned in, who has commented. If you're listening from Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube, thank you so much. Thank you for being here. Thank you for liking our video, sharing it with someone. This is my last call to action for the night. If you feel like any of the things that you heard on this podcast episode has resonated with you, share it with someone else who could use it. This is the best way to not only share wisdom of wealth, but also pass down some generational things that could break some generational walls, maybe some curses, maybe some heels, some mohills. We're all about just pushing as much forward for the platform of women, especially women in color, in around the spaces of tech and in around the spaces of the creative industries. So I really thank everyone for listening tonight. We will see you next month, probably.
Yes.
You won't see us before Halloween, so
we'll definitely not. We're spooky season it out for the rest of the month.
Oh yeah, you're gonna have to follow us in stories and all that things for all the other stuff. So that's where it's at. If you want to hear more episodes around More the Graphics podcast, please check out mtgthepodcast.com. That's mtgthepodcast.com. Not for Magic the Gathering, it's for More Than Graphics. So just keep it in mind, even though the pun still works. All right, y'all. Thanks for listening tonight, and we'll catch you next time.
Good night.
And just like that, the episode ends, but the convo has just begun.
Thanks for listening to the MTG podcast.
We want to hear from you. If you enjoyed our podcast, give it a review on your listening app of choice.
Continue to follow us across MTG socials.
And look out for bonus content releases throughout the year. This podcast is produced by Octane Design Studios.